not the one that's on the RIF list if there are layoffs and if things are happening within the organization. And I think part of really becoming, oh, hey, Christina, good to see you. And I don't know why it says that either, but thanks for joining in. I see your chat, so thanks. Oh, there you are. Good to see you. And so how do you make sure you stay off the RIF list? How do you become that invaluable person so you almost feel bulletproof? No matter what's going on around you, and as your friends are like hiding under their desk, hoping they don't get fired and all that stuff, like how do you continue to show up big? How do you keep playing big and making sure that you are the one that stays and is able to continue with your work? And so there's been several times where we've had, I've been in situations where there's major layoffs. There's, carnage everywhere. As I think I mentioned before, I was in the tech industry when the tech bubble burst. I was on Wall Street during 9/11. I was in the mortgage industry during the financial crisis. And so I really know a thing or two about being on the front line of some of these major economic downturns. And while I have been fired twice, I've never been impacted by layoffs and by things in terms of, recession impacted things. And I want to share some of those secrets with you today. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video that I really like. It's from a different coach. He has a recruiting background. And what he's going to share with us is some of the warning signs. And so what I want you to do is you're listening to this video, or you're watching this video rather, he's going to have 9 points that's going to give you kind of that subtle, oh, your company may be heading for trouble. And I want you to give yourself 1 point for everything that applies to you. And then let's come back after the video and see how many points everybody has. And then we'll walk through my 3 top tips on how to become invaluable. We'll talk through the pros and cons of water cooler talk, because there's good and bad to that. So I want to make sure that you're prepared and that you really know how to show up in those environments. And then ultimately, the most important thing that your manager is going to want from you, and is fortunately pretty much the same for everyone. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you as well. So if you hang on a second, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you will be able to see this. Hang on a second. Oh, everybody knows this is always so challenging for me to get this going for some reason. All right.
Is your job at risk of being cut due to a downsizing or a layoff? Well, stick around, because in this video I want to break down some signs that you need to look for to see whether or not you're truly in danger. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and today I want to share with you some signs that your job might be in danger of a potential layoff or downsizing. As a corporate recruiter and an HR professional with over 20 years of experience interviewing and hiring thousands of people into some of the world's most well-known, well-respected companies, I do unfortunately know a thing or two about layoffs, having been in one myself and having gone through several ups and down cycles in the market. So I'm going to give you some real life examples in this video and some things you should be paying attention to in a potential slowdown in the market. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more videos just like this one directly from a corporate recruiter, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You might want to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future posts. So wow, what a ride we have been on over the last 18 months to 2 years. So if we go back to 2019, the economy was cruising and suddenly a pandemic came along and everything went to a screeching halt. And the pandemic effectively shut everything down immediately, and companies look for ways to drastically cut costs in the form of layoffs. And in my opinion, they probably jumped into it a little too quickly, because sure enough, as soon as the economy opened back up again, things came screaming back. Suddenly, it seemed like everybody was riding the gravy train. Big salaries, new opportunities, the great resignation in full force, and in general, it's been a great time to be a job seeker. However, in a previous video, I mentioned this, that there might be a storm brewing. Suddenly, we're seeing an uptick in a bunch of companies that are announcing hiring freezes and layoffs. So it got me thinking, what's going on? If you're somebody that's sitting there wondering whether or not this is going to affect you, I wanted to put together a video to give you some warning signs that you can start looking for so that it can help you start to prepare. So without further ado, let's talk about some of those signs. The first sign is that the industry that you work in is in trouble. If the industry that you're working in is suddenly showing signs of weakness, it might be something to start paying attention to with your own company, because usually you can see these indicators. They start to pop up in your news feeds. You start to see some of your competitors. They're also maybe not doing so great. Let's use tech, for example. In 2020, 2021, there has been no hotter job market than the tech job market, in particular startups and big tech. Everybody was hiring. It's been a war on talent, salaries escalating, almost skyrocketing to the point where people actually couldn't even afford to hire anybody anymore because it was getting so expensive. And in spring of 2022, it seems like the carpet just got pulled right out from underneath the entire industry. Suddenly, those same corporations that were setting the pace in hiring have announced hiring freezes, or in some cases layoffs. And lately it seems like you can't even log into LinkedIn without some other tech firm announcing a layoff. But that's not just it. It's actually starting to spread to other industries as well. I'm seeing weakness in the real estate market. Companies like Wells Fargo have started to announce layoffs in the financial services sector, and we're starting to see some layoffs in heavy manufacturing, automotive, etc. So if the industry that you're working in is showing signs of weakness, or you think that it could be showing signs of weakness in the near future because maybe it's coupled with one of those other industries, something to keep in the back of your mind, that maybe you should start developing a contingency plan in case your industry or your company is hit. The next indicator to look for is if your company is not a market leader. So if you're in a space where these major players are showing a sign of weakness and your company is a second, third, or even fourth tier player in that industry, chances are it's going to hit you too. This is especially true if your company is primarily reliant on one or two major customers, because if those customers determine that they need to cut cost and your company is overly reliant on them, could be a really bad sign if they decide to cut those contracts and suddenly the company is looking at how they can reduce costs. Usually that's in the form of layoffs. And if your company is starting to forecast that same weakness, they may do things like announcing a hiring freeze. So for me, back in 2019, I was working for a company that was just crushing it in the market and we were hiring left and right. At the end of 2019, suddenly we went into a hiring freeze because the forecasts were not looking as favorable heading into the beginning part of the year. And this is right around the time we started hearing about this pandemic. Then of course the pandemic hit, but all the while we were already on hiring freeze and we were kind of doing interdepartmental projects where we were working on things that were outside of our wheelhouse, kind of cleaning up processes and kind of sweeping the deck, so to speak. And obviously, if you don't have any work to do over a longer period of time, there's only so many non-value added projects that you can be doing before the company really starts to look at more aggressive cost cutting. And that's exactly what happened to me. So my company went through very aggressive cost cutting measures in the form of layoffs in 2020 to get in front of what they felt would be a weakening of the market. Of course, again, the market swung back very drastically on the other end of it, but that became something that I paid really close attention to as I started to interview myself. How did the company that I was interviewing for handle the 2020 layoffs? Did they have layoffs? Or how did they handle cost cutting in that period of time where there was great uncertainty in the market? So if the company that you're working for has laid off in the past and as recently as 2020, there's a very good chance that they could be looking at an additional round of cost cutting because they've already proven that that's how they handle their business. Similarly, if you're working for a company that has not laid off and they've found creative ways to keep people busy, then that's probably a good sign that you're working for a company that values their employees. So another thing that we noticed, in addition to all the recs being cut and us going to a hiring freeze, was that there was also a freeze on company spending, or I should say non-essential company spending. So non-essential travel was scrutinized. Any expenses that you might have incurred were really looked at very closely. We were no longer going to conferences or spending money on employee development and things like big software upgrades and maybe renewals that your company opts to push out into the future. If you're in a situation where you're noticing all these cost-cutting measures, that should be a good indicator to you that that's probably not the only cost-cutting that they're looking at. The next major warning sign is if your company is highly reliant on variables that they can't control. And I'm thinking specifically about fuel prices. So if your company relies on boats or trains or trucks or planes to conduct a lot of their business, they're in danger of not being able to contain their costs because that's a variable they can't control. So as fuel prices skyrocket, the companies who are very dependent on that fuel price won't be able to contain those costs, and they may have to look at deeper cuts or shutting down certain lines of business that aren't that profitable to begin with. Because listen, these costs inevitably get passed on to the customer, and that might be a consumer. If it's not the consumer and the buck stops with the company, they have no choice but to eat those costs, and they got to figure out a way to make up for it some other place. So these things are all connected. If you're seeing this happening, it's definitely a warning sign. Now, the next major warning sign is very tricky and subtle, and beware of this one. If you get invited by somebody in HR to break down your work and justify what you do in a given day, that's a huge red flag. And this one happened to me, and this was kind of snaky because the HR group wanted to meet with each person just to see how things were going. And suddenly you're being asked in a very subtle way about the types of things that you've been working on over the past few months. Without realizing it, they're actually taking very close notes to see how they can survive without your position. And inevitably, if you answer the question wrong, your name gets put onto a spreadsheet and you become one of a number. In addition to HR, you may also see some new faces walking around the office. And if you do, you should start to pay attention to who they are, because they could be consultants who are helping management organize and plan the workforce for a life after that layoff. Doesn't mean that you should be paranoid about every single new face you see in the building, because maybe it's just a salesperson. But if that cubicle across the way from you is suddenly occupied by a consultant, you should definitely be paying attention to what it is that they're doing there. Because during times of difficulty, companies will often hire in consulting firms to help them workforce plan and make a strategy on how they can continue their business with the reduction in workforce. And the last major thing I want to cover in this video is if you suddenly see an exodus of people at the top levels of the organization. One of the things that I noticed in my organization was a whole bunch of people were starting to leave at the very top levels of the organization. In and of itself, I may not have recognized that as a warning sign when it was happening. But with the benefit of hindsight, looking back, I suddenly saw all these other warning signs, and people making that mass exodus out seemed like very peculiar timing. So I think it's important to note that if you notice one or two of these warning signs, it doesn't mean that your company is automatically considering a layoff. But if you start to notice multiple warning signs, use your gut intuition to get a sense of whether or not your company might indeed be looking at layoffs. And even if they're not, you should still be taking proactive measures, because as we enter into a market that might start to get more unstable, you want to make sure that you're staying on top of things. Make sure you know how to write an effective resume and keep your resume up to date. Make sure you're building your networks with like-minded individuals who will actually help you propel your job forward, because you don't want to be trying to scramble to build networks when you need them. You want to already have those in place, and make sure you're focusing on building up multiple streams of income to decouple yourself from the reliance on a single source of income. All these things are designed to protect your family, so you should take them very seriously. If you need more help, that's actually something that I specialize in. I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks, all from an insider's perspective.
All right. So, life after layoff, or avoiding a layoff and seeing the warning signs. Michael, what number did you have? Did you keep tally? Do you know what number you came up with based on your situation?
6, maybe 7. I've been through probably 3 rounds of layoffs before.
Okay.
And with every one that I've been through, my spidey senses got more accurate at predicting when it was going to happen. So the last 2 weren't even surprises. It was only a question of when, not if.
Yeah, okay, that makes right, exactly. So, and I love how you put those spidey senses, right? Because they do tingle. You're like, oh, hang on a second. You like to ignore them because they give us that uncomfortable feeling, and nobody likes to feel uncomfortable if you can help it. So I think
I tell my wife, I perceive this and I perceive that, and she's like, there's all these other explanations, and I'm like, yes, there are, but my gut says
yes,
this is the combination that implies there's something to it.
yeah, absolutely right about that. And Tiffany, I know you joined us a little late, and Christina had got called into her boss's office, so she's stepping away for a second. But so just to kind of catch you up on where we are too, Tiffany, is we just watched a video that gives us 9 warning signs that your organization is potentially considering layoffs. And so how do you see and kind of read the tea leaves to see if there's something that you should really be paying attention to? And just to summarize them quickly, that the whole industry is weak, right? And it's starting to, to see some compression. The other one is that your company is not an industry leader. And so if you are second, third tier in your industry, you're obviously going to be more subjected to market shifts and things like that come along with it. If they start to do a hiring freeze, if they, have had a history of laying off people in the past, if they they cap non-essential expenses, travel, all that kind of fun starts to get shelved. If they are subjected to uncontrollable variables. So the example that was used in the video was like, if you are highly dependent on fuel prices because you need to ship things, then that's another one Also, I think we've got quite a few people that are in the nonprofit sector. So when you think about donations, and if people are losing their job and donations are a key dependency, that's also a potential area to pay attention to. But then also people really getting interested in what exactly do you do, and discussing your work so that way, they know what's going on. If you start to see consultants around that might be actually in the process of helping re-engineer some work so you can do more with less. And then if you start to see some senior leaders start to jump ship. So just to catch you up really quick, Tiffany, that's the top 9. You can catch the replay as well. But I do think it's really important to know that these are the things to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, they're largely out of your control. There's nothing you can do other than make sure that you are positioned to be the one that gets to stay, assuming you want to, right? There may be a possibility. Oh, okay, you got 8 out of 9. Okay, Tiffany, then we definitely want to pay attention to that, right? It's like Will Robinson. And you're off mute. Yeah. So does it feel like things are weird, or is it just the warning signs? What do you think on the ground there?
Well, 8 out of 9, but we're an industry leader.
Yeah.
And all of those things are happening. I mean, just like within the last 3 weeks, they announced a hiring freeze, reduction of expenses. And the thought was they're trying to preserve their reserves.
Yes.
Preserve reserves. So it's
Yes.
like they've got deep pockets and they're trying to
Keep
keep their cash flow. So
Yes.
they're temporary hiring freeze until January 1. So everybody's holding their breath with whether or not we're going to get our bonuses, but they just gave us a 4% salary increase effective July 1st, entire, like 80% of the company. But a lot of senior leaders, a lot of folks are leaving, and the market isn't doing good, and all those other things on that list, everything except us being an industry leader.
Okay. So yes, so lean into this, right? So this is how you stay employed. If you want to. Some people would prefer to get riffed because then you've been there for a long time, or you have a giant package or whatever. But I think for most people, we'd like to keep the job that we like and that we're in. And so there's a few ways. There's 3 key ways to really become invaluable. And I've done these time and time again through many bad times, and they work all the time. It's just a question of how do you finesse it to get into your personal situation and to align with your personal brand and the value that the organization sees that you bring. And so the first thing I want you to do is I want you to put on your CEO hat. Because when you start to depersonalize the situation, and let's face it, losing your job potentially is very personal. But when you start to take a step back and be more objective and look at what's going on, and it's like, okay, in my department, in my area, whatever your span of control is, it's like, if I were the CEO, how would I run this? Because I guarantee you that there are efficiencies that can be gained everywhere. And, feel free to come off of mute and chime in, as you experience this as well. But when you start to not, kind of move away from, I need to protect my job, I need to protect my little patch and my control and, that kind of stuff. If you move away from that and say, hang on a second, top down, if I were to look at this, what are the opportunities to do more with less? What are the opportunities to really step up and make an impact? And when you start to make those recommendations, you become invaluable. I remember there's this one time when I was at Bank of America, obviously we riffed every year. That was just, the way we did it, 20%, and then you hire them all back the following year. So we were going through this exercise, and I really did have several people on my team that were very talented, but they were not at capacity. They just were not. And so instead of saying, I'm going to hang on to all my people and hope nobody notices, at the leadership team meeting, I'm like, listen, I've got a dozen people here that are highly valuable. And, so, we know we have to let people go. But because you have to let people go in terms of we did on performance, but you're left with not enough people to do the work. And I knew I didn't need all of them. And so by just saying, listen, we're going to riff the ones that unfortunately are, low value in terms of what the organization needed at the time, but I am going to give you my people. And that way, the important work can still get done. When you look at a process and you're like, this is ridiculous, we've got people checking the checkers. And so from that perspective, being able to, bring that conversation forward to your risk partners and say, I don't think we need to do this. And if we don't need to do this, then we can actually eliminate X number of roles, or, we don't have to eliminate roles because now we can get more work done, whatever the case may be. So I want you to depersonalize what's going on in the field and look at it like a CEO would look at it, and find opportunities to really do more with less, load balance the team, make sure you've got the right people in the right role, because when you are the one making those suggestions, now you're in the room. And when you're in the room, you know how the decisions are made, and there's a lot less likely chance that you're going to be impacted. It's when everyone else but you is in the room that you've got cause for concern. And so I want you to really think about that in terms of one of the 3 ways to stay invaluable is to always be objective and find opportunities to really help the organization optimize all the things that they need to. The second thing is, this is a great time, and it's a hard time, no doubt, but to take on more work. So typically when companies are going through difficult times, there are other headwinds that are in the way. So maybe there's more analysis that needs to go on. It's like, okay, let's do, our customers are leaving, or we don't have the organic growth that we need, or we're getting regulatory pressure, or, tech is just, our tech partners are just killing us right now. Whatever the case may be, there's other work that needs to get done to help your support partners deliver better for you, because they're going through the same downsizing and the same rationalization process that you are. And so pay attention to the important stuff. I'm not talking the doormat projects that no one wants to do, but what I am saying is, as organizations are starting to flex or starting to freeze positions, work's not getting done, projects are getting delayed, all of that stuff, to the extent that you're capable and your teams are capable of doing it, step in and take over. That's another way to stay invaluable. It's like, okay, yeah, I know that tech said they can't get this done now because they couldn't hire the extra 2 people that they needed. But you know what? I've got 2 people that can pitch hit as a business analyst. And so let's keep going and let's keep moving that forward. So when you have that mindset and you're part of the, okay, we're not just going to accept this, we're going to try and find a way forward, taking on more work that's in a strategic way is another way to stay incredibly valuable. And then the last thing, and I know it sounds very basic, and Michael, you and I were having a little bit of that conversation during our pregame this afternoon, but stay positive. There are so many people that are just terrified or negative or just, miserable, that you would be surprised how much a smile and energy will buy you. And Tiffany, I think in our coaching conversation, you mentioned that that's one of your superpowers, right? Is that you're known for bringing that energy and that optimism into a room of really tired people. And so those are the things that I want you to think about in terms of, it's not just Pollyanna, right? And just smile and, just ignore all the things, but there should be optimism and there should be positivity. And you need to lead with that level of influence because it's contagious. Right? Cranky people are contagious and positive people are contagious. So be the person that you want to be around. And then people will also gravitate towards you as well. So, between, depersonalizing things and taking an objective view, really taking on more strategic work because your business partners are not going to be in the position to do it, or, staying positive, which one of those do you think is most valuable for you? Or, Michael and Tiffany, do you guys have other ideas on ways to stay invaluable within the organization during these weird times?
I'm a big fan of finding important work that you think is unlikely to be cut and finding a way to become a critical part of that.
Right.
I think it's a great idea.
Good. Yep.
Yeah.
That is it's so important. And Tiffany, what about you?
I would agree. I would also add making sure that every interaction and everything we're doing adds value and is seen as adding value. So every time you're in a room, people feel like that interaction with you, that they couldn't replace it with anything else, that you're invaluable. But the value, we have to be doing that every interaction, every project, everything we touch.
Yeah, I think that's An excellent, excellent point, right? Every interaction, especially during these heightened times. Okay. So the other thing that I want to talk about is the pros and cons of the water cooler talk. Because let's face it, when, Tiffany, you were talking 8 out of 9. I think, Michael, you said 7 out of 9. And so people are talking, they're not stupid. And, there's always the gloom, the doom, did you hear this? Did you hear that? Sharing the rumor mills, doing all the things. And it can really get you sucked in. And it's, because you want to know. But I was a chief operating officer for a lot of different, very large business units, throughout my career. And these water cooler talks would drive me nuts because I always had a saying, and I think I said it in one of our earlier sessions in this series. And I want you to pay attention and listen to this because it's so true. So people who don't know talk, and people who know don't talk. So very often the information that you're getting is speculation, rumor, innuendo, all the things, and it's based on virtually nothing that you can substantiate. So it would always surprise me how many of these rumors, I'm like, all right, so what's going on out there? What are people saying? And it was just so far away from what was really happening. I'm like, how did that even get started? And so just take these things with a grain of salt in terms of, taking it verbatim. But I think there is some value in community. And so whether that's around the water cooler, whether that's, through, being more proactive and maybe heading to lunch with somebody or grabbing a cup of coffee or doing a virtual, whatever, if your guys aren't all in the same location. So what I would encourage you to do is double down on connections, double down on community, spend the time with the people on a personal level versus just, okay, meeting agenda, let's move on, assuming that's their jam. Some people don't love that. But really start to, broaden and deepen those personal connections and try and stay above the fray when it comes to the rumor mongering and all the fear and all the negativity and all the, oh, we're doing this again and all that kind of fun stuff. So I just think that's important to make sure that you have that good blend, because I see a lot of people, especially during difficult times, and I jokingly say they hide under their desks hoping not to get fired, but they actually do start to vanish a bit. They assume they're on the list. They assume they've lost all hope. It's like, nope, I'm not going to kill myself now. What's the point? I'm only going to get fired in 2 weeks anyway. And that is the worst thing you can possibly do, because even if you're not on the list, that's a great way to get on it in terms of the RIF list. And so make sure that you stay visible. Make sure that you stay connected, because it really is easy to just kind of pull into your little, bubble, stay safe, and not put yourself out there. But it's actually a very dangerous thing to do during these times. If you have done the right work and the good work to build a network and a power base and a sponsorship level within the organization, then this is a good time to make sure that you are staying top of mind within those areas. And I'm not talking about those creepy people. We all know them that just walk around, look like they're kissing people's asses 24/7. That's not what I'm talking about. But, Michael, to your point, right, in terms of diving into meaningful work, those people are going to be in the room, right? Asking, where's our biggest strategic priority right now? What else can we do? How can I help? My team has capacity. Those are the people that you're going to be going and having those conversations with. If you do not have a power base yet, it's too late. So you don't feel like you can just run and like, hey, I'm so-and-so, can we be best friends? Because obviously that's not going to work. But make sure that, to the extent that you do have your power base and your sponsors, that you really do make sure that you stay visible, you outreach, you do all of the things, because I think that is just so important. And so any other comments on that part in terms of getting sucked into the water cooler talk and, what you get, or do you guys try to avoid it? Do you dive in? What do you do when everybody is chatting about what's going on? Go ahead, Tiffany, and then Michael.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I listen and nod and usually say, oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, all right, okay, and change the subject.
It's like, thanks for the update, right? And then we're done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. How about you, Michael? Where are you on water cooler talk?
I'm never very good at it, um, largely because I prefer to work fewer hours, work more intensely, and get out of there. Um, a strategy that I use to build my confidence in those kind of periods is I do things about what I have control over, which is to always have a low grade job search underway. And when things feel risky, I ramp it up. And I do that so that I can walk into the office with more confidence that if I'm at risk, I won't be starting at ground zero. I've already got something to fall back on that'll accelerate the timeline. And just the confidence that comes with that
Yep.
Reduces the anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And that makes a lot of sense. But I also think, I know, given that you just said you're a heads down person, I'd like to get my work done. You may want to give yourself another half an hour a day to shake hands and kiss babies, right? And just to stay visible. Because I think a big mistake a lot of people make is thinking that their good work alone will stand up and help them be resilient. And that is sadly not always the case, right? So
In fact, I would actually propose that anytime somebody says, I just let my work do the talking for me, I tell them that I'm sorry, but your work is mute. It has no voice.
Yeah.
You are the voice of your work.
Yep, absolutely. And Tiffany, I know you have your hand up, so something else to add.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, water cooler talk before meetings is about the person, their life, their experience, what's happening, how their day was, to build some sort of authentic connection before we get to business.
Mm-hmm.
I do the around gossip mongering.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
I do not get in. I'm not talking about other people. I'm not talking about their business. I'm not talking about suppositions. So that's where I draw the line. But I am purposeful about building a network and taking 15 to 20 minutes to intentionally meet with people outside of my department at a time that I don't need anything from them.
Right.
It's just a point of connection. And I try to end almost all of those meetings with, so tell me what you're excited about. What are you working on and how can I help?
Yeah.
If I ever can, let me know. And so I'm doing that circuit, but I just stay away from the gossip.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a great strategy.
Definitely. 100%. Love it. You guys are spot on with this. Okay. And when we talk about the number one thing that your manager wants from you in order to stay invaluable, and you want to temper this with your current relationship. Not everyone has a great relationship with their boss, right? But I think what I always wanted most, and talking to a lot of peers and obviously doing all this coaching, for years, is for the team to remember that they're human, right? And that they are as uncertain as you are in most cases. And, being able to know that your team is supportive and that it's okay that we all don't know and kind of that we're in it together. So many times teams villainize the leader, like this is your fault, this is happening. And the reality is it's probably not. They're just having to deal with the situation and react in a way that is being pushed down from top, from the top to the bottom. And so I think this is a very human experience for everyone. And this is a moment where everyone feels vulnerable. And there are some people who are bad actors, right? Where as soon as things get tough, they pull out the punching gloves and just start to, start swinging. And there are people that hide, and then there are the people that lead. And so I think it's really important to, in terms of how do you support your manager so they don't want you on that list? How do you support your leadership team so they're like, there's, this is not somebody that we're going to let go. And it is really to just give them the space, the grace, the understanding, and the room to be human. And, because let's face it, even if, firing people, I'm sure we've all had to do it, is hard. And if it's not hard, then you need to stop doing what you're doing because something has gone terribly wrong, right? It never gets easy. And it's hard to say, okay, I know it's hard on my boss, but I may be the one getting fired. But to prevent that type of situation, I think just really dialing into the humanity of what your boss is going through, being there to support when they are not at their best, maybe giving them a little bit of space when they react in a way that's not normally how they react, instead of judging and saying, okay, why are you being such a jerk? So I just think a little bit of understanding and a lot of empathy goes a long way into building that bond and that relationship with your boss, to where it's like, I know your job sucks and it's not easy right now. And if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Because the people who came to me and did that, the people, you know, because I was not always at my best during these high moments of stress, you know, and when you start to get to the point where you're not just cutting the fat out of the organizations, you're really digging into the flesh and the bone, like it gets hard. And, you know, and so for people who made my life harder because of that, you know, self-focused, you know, projection that they were showing up as, like, I just really didn't want to be near them very often. It's not like they went on the RIF list because of it, but, you know, I felt a little less bad when they were, versus, you know, people who really were trying to support and like, we're in it together. It's a numbers game. Whatever's going to be is going to be, but let's make the best out of it while we're here. And so just give your managers the ability to be human, I think is the most important thing during these weird times. And so does that resonate with you guys, or does that feel a little off depending on your relationship with your manager? Go ahead,
I'd
Mike.
say that giving people assumption of positive intent and demonstrating empathy will at least be great for your mental health, and it might actually help with theirs and make the world a little better place.
Yeah. Okay. Like that. And Tiffany?
I agree with Michael on that one.
All right. So we're in resounding agreement on that, right? And I think positive intent is something that so many of us just don't default to. And it is interesting, like how when something happens and we're like immediately thinking, oh, it's personal, or why do they do that? It's like, they're not doing it on purpose, right? So I love the term positive intent, Mike. So thanks for bringing that in. And so when we're in these moments, and you know, and you also, you know, so I think these are some of the things that you can do internally to make sure that you are as bulletproof as you can possibly be. And you know, but you also want to hedge. You don't want to be crazy in terms of, oh, I'm fine. And I think that's one of the issues, right? Is when you're overconfident and then you get shocked and, you know, you get caught up with, you know, with the surprise at the end. And so you want to make sure that your resume is updated for sure. Because let's face it, even when there's reductions that are going on within your organization, other departments are still hiring. And there was always this weird thing where you're like, you've got this massive bloodletting on one side, and then people are still hiring on the other side because customers have to be serviced and business has to get done. And so to be able to be flexible and to move around within the organization where there are pockets of opportunity, you want to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn profile and whatever internal company intranet system, you know, that everybody uses to kind of put up their profiles is completely up to date and super polished, right? Because those are the first things people are going to look at when you've got those opportunities. So make sure you do that. Double down on your network externally, right? This is a good time to reach out. And especially if you're in the situation, like, you know, financial services is a really good example where they're seeing some headwinds right now. And so, you know, it's always shuffle the decks within financial services. So it's the same people that get shaken up and just moving into different companies. So reach out to your old colleagues and be like, what's going on over there? Because just having those conversations in terms of, are you guys good? Are you cutting back? What's, you know, what's going on is going to give you a good perspective in the market, but it's also going to reignite some of those relationships to see what's happening out there. And then I think the other thing you want to make sure is that this is a really good time for you to recalibrate what success means for you. After COVID, we all had, or during COVID, I think we all had a very big eye-opening moment where so many of us defined success differently when it was over. It's like we were chasing, you know, this, the big house, the toys, the title, the whatever. And then when you don't have all the distractions, you realize this job sucks and I don't want to do it anymore. And we've recalibrated really how we define success in our lives. And so this is another good time to do that, because if you find that you're stressed, if you find that you're, just completely manic about, things that are out of your control, you may be afraid of losing something that's not that important to you anymore. It's just what you're used to, and it's what you're used to having, and all of those other things. So I would encourage you to just recalibrate success and make sure that this is something that you are still excited about and that you still want to do. Because in some situations, depending on your tenure and how long you've been within the organization, you can volunteer to opt out. Right? If you're in that, great position where you're like, listen, I've been with the company for long enough. I've got 6 months to a year severance. They're going to, continue to, to pay my medical benefits and all of these other things. And you are no longer loving what you're doing, and it's time for a change. This may be a great opportunity for you to do that and for you to switch and pivot into something that you love. So take stock of what success really means for you to make sure that the thing that you're fighting for is still the thing that you actually want. So just some things to keep in mind in terms of both internally and then externally with where the things that you should be focusing on. So I'm going to open it up now to, roundtable discussion, hot seat, if you guys have a topic you want to go coach through. So, or any questions that you guys have or comments. So what do you guys have for me? Go ahead, Michael.
I'm pondering.
I'm pondering. Okay, that's fine. We can think for a minute. It's all good.
I have a question. This is, every time I sit down to think about updating my resume, it's exhausting to think about.
Yes, it is a soul crushing experience. I 100% agree with you on that.
It's absolutely exhausting. And the more professional or the more you sort of progress in your career, the less interested I am in doing it. Do you have any advice about maybe parallel processing with entering into starting a business, doing what you love, if your job isn't really filling your cup? Do you have any insights about that?
In terms of, moving out of corporate, right? And starting to do something that you may have a more, passion for. And Tiffany, I think it's a really interesting thing that a lot of people are considering right now. And I think where the first step, at least for me, when I made that decision, because it was, I was no longer lit up by what I did anymore, right? It was just soul crushing grind, and I couldn't take it. I'm just like, I got to do something significantly different. And then, so for me, the first step is, okay, if you want to do something like that, what's your best strategy? Do you have enough cash flow to be able to say, you know what, I don't have to actually get a paycheck for a bit, and I'm going to go big, right? And I'm going to go big, and I'm going to, all or nothing, or do you want to test the water a little bit and do more of a side hustle to where you're like, let me see if I can test my idea, see if people pay me for whatever it is that you want to bring to the world. And, and when you build that strategy in terms of, do I want to do my own thing, or do I want to stay and work in corporate? For me, a lot of it was very much about the financial decision. Like, how can I sustain my family and support my lifestyle, and still do what I wanted to do? And that path is going to be different for everyone. If you're sitting on stock options and you're sitting on cash and, you're okay for a bit, then you're going to take a very different approach than, if you've got about 3 months savings in the bank, you've got, toys, kids in college, big houses, all that kind of fun stuff. So you got to really take that into consideration. The other thing I think that's really important is to do as many informational interviews as you possibly can with people who are already doing the thing that you think you want to do. Because it's never what you think it is. And I've got a really good colleague of mine. She's a wellness coach, and all she wanted to do was own a wellness center. And she and I are really good friends because we're totally opposite. Like, she's all airy fairy and I'm not. And that was her goal. Like, she wanted to own a wellness center. Well, she worked hard, she saved money, and she was able to buy a wellness center. It was, massage and meditation and yoga and all the things. She was in it 6 months, and was miserable. She absolutely hated it because she liked the wellness part. She hated the business part. She didn't like having to hire massage therapists and, deal with people who are late and deal with customers that were unhappy and who's doing the laundry and the marketing and the accounting and she hated all of those things. And so had she spoken to someone who did this for a living and said, tell me exactly, can I shadow you, right? Let me see what your week looks like. Tell me what your day looks like. She would have ran far and fast from her concept of owning a wellness center. It took her.
And Tammy, that reminds me of why I fly in the face of the American admonition to pursue your passion. My proposed alternative is passions make great hobbies. But once it's a business, your actual activity is running the business, not doing what you're passionate about.
That's
in
exactly,
most occasions.
Yeah, and Mike, I think you're spot on with that, right? Which is why I'll never own a bar. Right, I'm better on the other side of a bar stool and a restaurant, that's for sure.
That's funny.
But it took her 9 years to unwind that mistake. It took her 9 years to build the business up to the point where she could sell it and make a profit. And so, so in terms of that journey, in terms of, I think I want to do something, there's so much grunt work that's not sexy, that is involved, that you got to really want it, and so, Tiffany, I don't know if that was a long answer to a short question or if that helped, give you some things to think about.
It did. It's funny you say that. After, to Michael's point, after running my business for over 10 years, we had some really great successes, and we changed the industry in the community and pioneered the industry. But and my girlfriend was telling me the other day, Tiffany, you were so happy when you were doing that. You were a totally different person. And yet it's still I got really, really good at it, but I didn't make a lot of money doing it.
Right.
I had strong brand presence. And if you stick with that long enough, then you can monetize a lot. But it just takes a lot of running and managing, and you have to have the right teams in place. And then I'm managing a team on the other side of the world that's trying to get the work done. And it's just what Michael said. And then you end up, and what you just said, you end up not doing the thing that you love the most, because you got to run the business, or you have to have a strong team in place to keep that going.
And that happens in corporate America too, in the sense that if you love accounting or if you love whatever your function is, you might not spend all your time doing that function, even in corporate America, unless you're really a specialist. Like if you're running an accounting department, how much of your time is going to be spent on budgets and people management and all the other things that have nothing to do with accounting? It has to do with being a manager.
Yeah, you're so right. I guess there's that in whatever you do. Like right now, the part of my job I love, 25% of it is only doing what I love. And that's the strategic part, right? Innovation, ideating, strategizing. But then, you got to roll your sleeve up and do 75% of the other things that you don't like.
Yes. That conversation is very familiar, Tiffany, right? So yeah. It's like, oh, I have to do all the things I hate, right? Or at least like a lot less. And that is life, right? I mean, we don't all get to do everything that we love to do all day, every day. But
not even you in your current role, huh?
No, actually, right. Exactly. I do have to put on my big girl pants and, do things I don't like. Sometimes I feel like a 3-year-old on the floor of a supermarket having a temper tantrum, but I do have to do it. But for me, like those things that are necessary but don't light me up are also the things that I know that when I do those well and consistently give me opportunity to do the things that I do love, which are things like this.
Oh, that's what a great way to say it. That can really orient our attitude from I hate doing this to I'm so excited about what this undesirable activity is going to allow me to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down. That was greatness. Thank you for that attitude adjustment.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. Right. And so that's really how I get through with it, because I nobody likes to do the things they don't like to do. Right. And the discipline, the motivation, all of those things are hard. And so yeah, that's how I get through. But then also, as we're growing as a company, those are the first things to go. Right. So I'm like, okay,
Great
these
point.
are not my wheelhouse. They're not, they're important, but they're not part of the brand, the IP, the transformation. They're the business parts of it. And so as you grow and are able to do that, then those are the first things that go. And they go to people that love it. Like it's so funny. I've got a brilliantly talented woman on my team, and we did this personality, leadership type assessment, and we are exactly opposite. And it's awesome because, she's very detail oriented and very focused, and like, she just loves to get in there and get it done. And I'm like, oh, that would drive me crazy. And so I'm the big thinker and she's the executor, and it just works out really well. So also, as you're thinking, going back into the entrepreneurial mindset, Tiffany, of, if you're in the position where you can offload some work because you've got, the revenue to be able to do that, do the things that you don't love, but find someone who's awesome at it. So a lot of times we tend to want to hire people like ourselves, which just gives you another person who doesn't like to do it either. So just enjoy that diversity, because it just really helps the whole team move faster, and the work just gets done so much better. So, it's just some things to think about as well. Okay. Any other questions or topics you want to talk about before we do highlights for tonight? Anything else? Okay.
Some good nuggets. Thank you for that.
I love these small groups. We could just dig in and have fun. These make me so happy. Okay, so before we wrap up, and Tiffany, we always finish with this, right? So what was the most valuable takeaway that you had from the conversation tonight before we wrap up? Who wants to go first?
I was trying to defer because I'm always such a noisy bull in a china shop.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, ladies first, Tiffany, you go first.
Yeah, like two things: keep your resume updated, and cherish what you have right now that enables you to do the thing that you love.
All right, I love that. And Michael.
This new orientation and attitude, since attitude is freaking everything, that the things that I don't want to do or don't like to do, I can simply align them as key enablers to the outcomes that will let me get to what I want to do. So now I have a new perspective on the undesirable parts, because I will align them to enabling the desired parts.
Awesome.
I think that's going to be really powerful in my career as well as job hunting. So thank you for that.
Awesome. My pleasure. Excellent. And Tiffany, just another side note tactically on the whole resume situation. At your level, it's perfectly acceptable, at least, just to hedge your bets and make sure that you're prepared, to have a rock star LinkedIn profile and a really strong bio. Okay. So, so in terms of, thinking about how you want to show up, because I would never send my resume. I'm like, my LinkedIn profile is updated and here's my bio with all the other things that so, so as you're networking, or as people are like, oh, send me your resume, it's probably the worst thing you can do, because there's not a rec open. You don't know what you're being considered for. And so a good pro tip that I like to share is just respond by saying, resumes are long and boring. I'm going to send you my bio and my LinkedIn profile, and let's start there. And everyone's like, oh, okay, that's great. So that might be a much easier way. And I'm sure, given you have your own company, you probably have a bio or two laying around that you can modify and make appropriate for what you're doing now.
I don't have a very good bio. I wonder whether you'd be willing to share yours, or if that would be a service you'd like us to hire you to do.
No, I would be happy to share my bio with you. It's not rocket science, right? So, but no, I'll send it out to you, Michael, so you have it for sure.
Oh, I'd love to have a copy of it too.
All right. Yep, I'll get it to both of you then. Only those who are present will get the bio. So, but no.
More value add, bonus.
You gotta show up to get the good stuff. But no, I'll send you my bio, and then you can just kind of take it and make it your own. So I think, quick, bio 101, start with an impact statement. Like, not what do you do, but impact do you make? The middle part is, okay, how'd you do it? Right. So in terms of companies and blah, blah, blah. And the end is all about the fun stuff that, the personal stuff about what you like, what your passions, all that kind of fun stuff. So, but I'll send you guys my bio, and that way you can look at it, and feel free to just steal all the things. Obviously you can't say you live in Belize, but everything else is fine. So
I'm going to say I was a Bank of America executive.
That's right. Exactly. So, all right. Well,
Tiffany, the funny thing there is that Tammy and I worked at Bank of America at the same time, though I don't think we were ever in the same room.
Yeah. No. I don't think
wow.
there were 400,000 people at the time, right? So, so it's hard to get in the same room with all of them. But yes, so Mike and I, our paths have crossed, and Tiffany is a private client, executive coaching client with us as well. So, and Michael will be joining the ranks as soon as he clears his decks with a million things that he's wrapping up. So.
Oh,
I'm finishing.
Awesome.
Tiffany, I'm finishing a master's degree in executive coaching in
Wow.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's incredibly exciting. So yeah, I do admit that I'm always sitting on the sideline criticizing or critiquing your coaching skills. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm actually not. Because you call yourself a career coach, but according to International Coaching Federation, what you do is more consulting.
Absolutely.
But I won't bore you with the academic differences. The fact is we both have ways to add value.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's why I see
it sounds like he's putting a bid in for a partnership. I don't know what you think, Pam.
Michael, we are adding to the coaching team, as you well know. So yeah, client turn coach. You wouldn't be the first one to do that. But yeah, so something to think about. But okay, well, you guys have been fantastic. It's been such an insightful and highly interactive conversation. So thanks for dialing in the hot summer, where there's a million other fun things to do, and congratulations for just putting the time into your career.